Good evening. My name is Minister Johnny Banks, Senior. I'm Executive Director of A Knock at Midnight. A Knock at Midnight is located at 400 West 76th Street in Suite 206. We're in the Inglewood community, and we serve many of the surrounding communities in that area, as well as some of the work we do is citywide. It's just really good to be back on the show again, talking to the viewing audience. I'm always encouraged with the opportunities to do this show, to talk about some of the, not just the stuff that's going on, with the violence that happened in Florida, the continuation of the violence in Chicago, the wars that are raging around the world, and all of the things that are going on. How do we manage the ebb and flow of the day-to-day life of a person who's just trying to make it, a person who's just trying to make ends meet, take care of themselves, take care of their families, as well as deal with the checks and balances of this uncertain time and this uncertain world that we live in. At A Knock at Midnight, we use varying strategies that we have been using for years. Information, education, community mobilizations, alternatives, and also dibbling and dabbling in social policies, trying to make some policy changes that's not just in the interests of African American people, but in the interests of all people. Dealing with alternatives to not only education, but alternatives to recreation, alternatives to economics. How do we go from where there's no opportunities to creating opportunities? We need to have some alternatives or some strategies to get that done. Part of that is mobilizing a community around certain issues, certain questions, and certain needs, and likewise educating those same people, those same individuals, that same constituency on what they need to be doing, not only to garner a better way of living for themselves and for their family, but their fellow man as well. And understanding the information world, the information highway that we live in, whether it's social media, whether it's other forms of the internet, any other highly technological gadgetry or tools that are used to extract or to put out information. We really need to come to terms with those strategies and use those strategies to help people to really better their lives, better their situations, and better their circumstances. Because whether it occurs within our families, whether it occurs within our churches, our neighborhoods or organizations, there is a surge in this world. There's a surge in this country. There's a surge in this state, the county of Cook. There's a surge in the city of Chicago for freedom. Because we do understand that when people are oppressed, they will not stay oppressed. Oppression is temporary. Oppression has an end. And what we have to teach people and get people to understand is that your oppressor not only can look unlike you, your oppressor can look just like you. And so we have to understand that when the vestiges of oppression is coming to an end, we must rise up and rise above that, take ourselves and our families above that. And there's some ways that we can do that. But you cannot do that void of a strategy, void of a plan, a process, and a procedure to get it done. I know these words sound redundant. I know that these things sound like they're really dull and really boring. But if you go to bed tonight and you have to do something in the morning and the weather forecaster says it's going to snow, then naturally before you go to bed you would plan to put on boots and a coat and a hat, scarf, and things that protect you from the snow. You didn't just do this arbitrarily. You didn't just do this with reflex. You did it because you planned to do it. That's how simple things is. People don't plan to fail, they just fail to plan. And we have to get to the point where we are trying to plan ahead what's going to happen. Planning comes by faith, and faith comes by work. And so many people plan, but they won't put the work in, which shows a lack of faith in the plan. So I'm encouraging people, let's think about what are you planning to do with your life. There has to be something afterwards that you plan to do, and we're going to talk about it a little bit, because if we really think about it, our surge for freedom, our surge for something different, It's been in part of the social fabric of our nation. Whether it's neglect, marginalization, or whatever, it will eventually be seen for what it is. And see, when people marginalize you, when people oppress you, eventually you will see it for what it is. Many of us, we follow leadership that are so bad. We follow people that are so incapable of leading you that once you figure out what you're doing, once you figure out where you need to be, you're almost at a point of no return. And we have to really look at it. When you are being put in a box or you're being marginalized, if all you are is a husband, then you've marginalized yourself, because within you there is a father, within you there's a brother, within you there's a son. If all you are is a mother, whether within you there's a wife, there's a sister and a daughter. Don't marginalize yourself, because you won't be able to use the entire resources that you have within you, because part of the rationale, or part of the reality of getting out of oppression, is to deal with what's in you. And many times we're looking for some stimulus outside of us to get people's foot off your neck. If you want to have a better opportunities, then you have to better equip yourself with the tools that magnetize you, and they draw into you opportunity. That stuff is real. Listen, my name is Minister Johnny Banks. The call-in number here is 312-738-1060. And we just simply talking about oppression comes to an end. You know, oppression comes to an end. You know, one of the things that in our history, in African American history, we know that Martin Luther King played a lead role in the surge for freedom of the American, or the African in America. We know that. You know, one of the problems is that we see that not only do we deal with personal experiences, because Dr. King, he dealt not only with his personal experiences, but he dealt with history as well, when he said, and he quoted, and I quote him, "An oppressed people cannot forever remain oppressed." The freedom, or the will to be free, will manifest itself. And let me show you what I mean. When you are tired of not having any money, even though you are getting some form of resources on a regular basis if you have a job, when does saving some of those resources become important to you? When do you stop and say, okay, I'll sacrifice these things in order to have something that can sustain me in times of trouble? We struggle so much at the thought of times of trouble that we would rather seek pleasure than use the principle of a penny saved is a penny earned. We'd rather seek pleasure than to use the principles that we know that you don't spend everything that you get. You learn how to invest in yourself. Part of the investment in yourself is to create revenue, whether it's saved in a bank account, whether it's saved in a retirement account, whether it's saved in the development and the purchase of real estate. We have to put ourselves in some. This requires a plan. We can't seek pleasure to the point that we don't have a plan. You know, people buy houses when they have a plan. People get apartments when they want pleasure. Want somewhere to live so we can do and be free to engage each other as we choose. But when you are invested in property and you're investing in the acquisition of mortgages and stuff like that, the mindset has to change, because you can acquire it, but you won't keep it. So we got to realize that oppression, some of it is self-imposed, some of it is imposed by others. What happens when the oppressor takes his foot off of you? Are you prepared then to take the shackles off yourself? Because if a person sets you free but you're still shackled, then you're still enslaved. So we got to be willing to take the shackles off not only our hands and not only our feet, but take the shackles off our minds, continue to allow ourselves to be educated, continue to allow ourselves to engage with people and participate in a co-optive economic plan with our family, so that we can start developing the resources and the things that we need to better our own lives and to better ourselves. You know, it's funny that every form of freedom, and we basically talk about worldly and economic freedom, but I want to talk about, when do you plan to free yourself? When do you plan? Many of us are suffering from religious slavery. We have gotten so caught up in religion that we don't think for ourselves. We have gotten so caught up in religion that we don't even know how to conduct ourselves in the reality that's wrapped around our own spirituality. Because we religiously participate, we religiously go, and we don't think our way through any of it. So we need to deal with the whole thing of, when we start talking about the release of oppression, the release of your spirit out of this secular, out of this tyrannical hold that's on you around religion, so that you are free to serve, and you are free to worship, and you are free because it's a spiritual reality. And it is one of the struggles that we are having, one of the gargantuan struggles that we are having now, is the love of Christ without the spirits to practice the principles. The love of whatever people want to practice, but not have the principles to carry it out. And the principles are in the same literature that you read on a regular basis. So we're gonna take any caller. Our call-in number is 312-738-1060. And call in and talk about, what is it that you plan to do with the rest of your life? What is your plan, and how would you implement this plan, develop this plan, maintain this plan, and then be able to create what you need for yourself and others based on the plan? And many times I've learned in my experience, especially if you let me give you an example. If you plan to be free spiritually, then what's the plan? Because spirituality is the heartbeat of the human being. There's nothing that goes on inside of the human being that's void of some kind of spirituality. The spirit will is real, but when the spiritual reality around us is that we live in a bastardized culture, we deal with secularism, materialism, we deal with militarism, we deal with all of the ills or the isms, but we still won't deal with spirituality. We won't deal with it. When we've seen that even in our supposed spiritual reality, we're selling for bondage rather than freedom, because we should be free, but we still seem to be bound. We're still with spirituality, but we're still living in the darkness. We have not come to the light. So we're still struggling with this piece. So what is the plan? And how do we get past the oppression of the day, past the oppression of the moment, and develop what we need to develop for ourselves and others? Listen, we have a call on the line. Caller, could you be brief with your comment or question? Caller?
Hello?
Yes, are you there?
All right. I'd just like to say I find the younger generation, they have master's degrees and VAs and all that, but they find more in pleasure and designer clothes than they do investment. I'm from the old school from Arkansas, and I had to come from a big family on welfare, and I came to Chicago, and I went to had to get a job and save money, and I opened my own business, a beauty shop for 30 years, and I invested in a Ford Pratt, and then I invested in another building. But I find my grandson is an RN, my daughter been on her job for 25 years as a nurse, and I talk to them about investment. They more into traveling and designer clothes and having fun. I don't understand it.
Well, it goes again to what I was talking about. How do people judge freedom? How do generationally, you're talking about a generation where people had so much less. They had, in order to get from Mississippi to Chicago, you had to drive 16 hours. Now you can get on a plane and do it in 2. And you had to drive. Everything was slower. You needed information. You had to read it in old Britannica encyclopedias. Now all this stuff is at the push of a button. Times have changed, but the people that are supposed to be developing the youth have not changed. In order for a young person to want to invest, you can't talk to him about investing at 25 You got to talk to them about investing at 5. They have to understand stocks, bonds, dividends, stuff like that at an early age. So as they grow and they come into resources, they can see the benefits of delayed gratification. They can see the benefits of not dealing with instant gratification as they go and look into long-term investment and looking at when they get into their 30s and 40s, they can do some of the things they want to do because they have been very wise with their resources. See, I too am an older citizen now. I'm fastly approaching the age of 60. I'm no longer willing to blame those younger than me that I did not teach how to do right and blame them for not doing right. I no longer am capable of doing such. Because I have to look at the part that I played in it. Being unable, due to the oppression that went on in my life, due to the lack of education in my life, due to the love of the streets in my life, due to the love of drugs in my life, due to no love for authority or authority figures that were in my life, leaving the safety of the nest that my parents prepared for me and going and doing some other things in my life, I have to look at the decisions I made. And when I look at that, those are the determinants that can tell me what might be the outcomes of the people that I brought into this world. Either I can work to change it, or I'll sit idly and in my infinite wisdom philosophize on what's wrong with other people and not tell the truth about the damage caused by one person who had under his administration other lives. And these are the problems that we're having. So when the top of the food chain decides that it does not want to be impressed anymore, it takes the shackles off everybody under their administration. This is the problem that we are having, is we don't see it as a plan of action to change not only the quality of life of yourself, but the quality of life of everything around you. And that is a gargantuan fight that we're going to continue to have, because people are so starved spiritually and relationally. You know, and when we're talking about spirituality, we're talking about the relationships and things that go along with it. We're talking about people who are spiritually and relationally don't have the inner wisdom to make the right decisions on a regular basis. We're talking about people who are spiritually and relationally unable to think about anything outside of themselves, because a plan requires the human resources to be attached to it. Because it's not a singular action. It is a singular action with plural people that it impacts. And we think that we don't impact other people, but in actuality we do. So when we start talking about the young people of today, now you have to understand they have greater earning power. They have greater education. Many of them do. You know, we always talk about the negative, but many of these young people have done what they needed to do for themselves. And yes, they are able to wear fashions. They are able to wear the things that they want, travel places they want to go. Because unlike those of us who were enslaved to factories and those of us who were enslaved to mule kind of work, we're talking about young people now who have developed their minds and developed the capacity to think their way through, and understand technology. We always are putting our young people down, but many of them are bordering on brilliance and breaking through. The things have changed. They're not the way that they used to be. Now we have to learn from them instead of detracting or subtracting their accomplishments. We have to learn from them and get them to teach us what they know, because these young people are growing. These young people are improving upon what's out here for them. And because they do that, they don't have the ability to sit around and listen to a bunch of people that's spitting out watermelon seeds and drinking and drugging. They don't do that. They've taken their lives and they're trying to do something with it. I would like to believe that many of these young people have a plan to enjoy their lives while they're early and start to correct and develop some of the things they need to do as they approach their early 30s. I see it happening all the time. It is a wonderful thing to watch. My mistakes, I can't say that they are their mistakes. I think that what we have to do is continue to develop a plan, a process, and some procedures to change our lives so that the plan can grow some fruit. See, it's a funny thing, and if you are a Bible reader, you'll know that Noah started to build the ark and it had never rained. And I'm sure that everybody thought something was wrong with him because he had a plan. He was preparing for rain. We have to make the proper preparations for what we see coming in front of us, because evil will not always reign. Wrong does not forever sit on the throne. So we plan for tomorrow. We talk about the gentrification of a lot of these communities. Well, a lot of these young people are buying properties in these communities. They're positioning themselves for a groundswell of resources and some other opportunities. And it's not all pleasure. I see more pleasure derived from the 40 and older group, as they will not correct their mistakes. That a lot of them won't go back to school. A lot of them won't get married. A lot of them won't change their ways. They won't put the alcohol down. They won't put the drugs down. They won't mesh themselves into healthy relationships. All they want to do is reminisce about what they used to do. Sit and talk about how things were, and not even looking toward tomorrow, because it doesn't change without you putting some energy into it. Listen, my name is Minister Johnny Banks Sr. I'm the Executive Director of A Knock at Midnight. Before we go, I want to talk a little bit about something else that we are doing. Here we have, this is our program, this is our mentoring program. It's called Foundations of Mentoring. We're doing some great stuff with truancy that's mentoring based. We've done a lot of attendance and truancy work with Chicago Public Schools. We met a lot of school administrators, a lot of teachers, but most importantly, a lot of young people who are struggling. We've been able to help them, help their families. We have helped numbers of young people with their graduation, with paying their fees, all of the things that they need to try to get to the next level into graduation. This is what it's all about, you all, is helping these young people get a foundation for their life, helping them get some principles that they can live by, instructing them, showing them the disciplines that they need to practice, plan, and have a process and a procedure to live a decent life. That is done strategically, that is done scientifically, that is done missionally. At Knock at Midnight, we do all that. We're grateful that we have some of our young people that's still working with us, still coming back every summer, coming from college and different walks of life, and we are grateful that we have the things in place to put them back to work. We can't say enough about some of those young people, some of the strides that they are making as well. Another opportunity here, this is our Knock at Midnight's Truancy and Intervention Program, Boots on the Ground. In the coming shows, I'll be talking about some employment opportunities that are going to be coming up, and we're going to be asking people to give us a call, send us your resume. Our office number is 773-488-2960. Give us a call, ask for myself, Minister Johnny Banks. I'll talk to you about some upcoming opportunities around truancy, prevention, and our intervention program. It is very exciting, it's very dynamic, and it's good work helping the community better their conditions, helping these young people get toward a good education. Listen, this time goes fast. Matter of fact, it goes too fast. You look up, we started, and a few minutes later, they are signaling me to let me know our time is up. Listen, it's always great to sit here, talk with you. I encourage you to call in when we on. I encourage you to stop by Knock at Midnight at 400 West 76th Street in Suite 206. Ask for me, Minister Johnny Banks, or some of the other staff. We'll tell you about what we're doing, and we'll tell you how we're doing it. We'll tell you why we're doing it and how you can get involved. Listen, it's been a great show. I appreciate you guys listening. Remember that in the darkest hour, truth and knowledge is the way. Good night, and God bless you.